This autumn also sees the release of a spate of films dealing with the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. BBC's security correspondent Frank Gardner reports on how Hollywood is depicting the war on terror.
Well, the base has just come under attack. There have been rockets fired at us, and they're about to start sending out artillery. I've been reporting from all corners of the Middle East for the BBC for over 12 years. But one day in 2004, I tragically became the story.
The BBC has confirmed tonight that a BBC team has come under fire from gunmen in a suburb of the Saudi capital, Riyadh. The BBC security correspondent, Frank Gardner, has been injured.
It's been a long road to recovery since Al-Qaeda gunmen left me paralysed. During my time in hospital, watching DVDs was a form of therapy. And one of the films that really caught my attention was Michael Mann's Collateral, featuring Tom Cruise as a hitman in LA. In one scene, he shoots muggers in a back street, and that noise, the sound of a pistol going off, followed immediately by the tinkle of the empty cartridge case hitting the tarmac, was exactly what I remember from being shot. I had to keep rewinding and watching it again and again to make sure that I wouldn't jump every time a gun went off on television. Now, 3 years later, the Culture Show have asked me to give my take on how Hollywood is depicting the war on terror. The first film I'm going to review is Robert Redford's Lions for Lambs, premiering here at the 51st London Film Festival. It's a complex piece which weaves together several stories about the war in Afghanistan. Meryl Streep plays a cynical journalist, while Tom Cruise is a senator with a bold and fatally flawed plan to win the war.
You're about to implement another new strategy, regardless of the human cost or the financial cost, because you predict
we thought
that
deeply
maybe
about the human cost when we were planning this strategy.
What were your estimates exactly?
What I can say is that this strategy has patience and determination at its core. It ensures that it puts our fighting men in spots where they can face, fight, and kill the enemy.
Someone did their research very carefully for this film. The US military briefings depicted at Bagram Air Base, for example, are exactly like the ones that I've attended in Afghanistan. But on a deeper note, this film is bang up to date. It explores the desperate search in Washington for a way out of the perceived quagmires in Iraq and Afghanistan. Also tackling these issues is Rendition. It's about a man accused by the US government of colluding with terrorists. Based on a true story, it follows his abduction by the CIA and subsequent torture in an Arab jail. What's disturbing about it is that this stuff actually happens. So-called high-value prisoners have been rendered off for interrogation to dark dungeons in countries with very bad human rights records. The film stars Jake Gyllenhaal as a thoughtful CIA analyst. Meryl Streep pops up again, this time playing a hardball CIA director.
You're new to this, aren't you?
This is my first torture.
The United States does not torture, Douglas. Let me tell you something. This is how this works. You worry about getting the information, and I will worry whether the information you get is helpful, okay?
I went to meet Jake to chat with him about Rendition.
Hi, how are you?
Mr. Gyllenhaal, I presume. But before the interview began, I had an admission to make. I'm not a film critic. I know very little about films, but I'm a sort of war on terror correspondent.
Okay.
So I've been doing, this is why I'm in the wheelchair. I got shot by Al-Qaeda in Saudi Arabia 3 years ago. So I've been to Afghanistan and Iraq, and actually I started covering Extraordinary Rendition back in 2003. So
wow.
Because there's this big debate in the States at the moment about what constitutes torture in the war on terror. Is it justified? Is the timing of this, do you think, is it quite apposite?
It's extraordinary to see how many people have been tortured and consider themselves totally innocent, you know. And I think the argument in the center of the film between Meryl Streep and Peter Sarsgaard, when he says to her,
I'll mail you the Constitution.
Yeah, and she says, well, I'll mail you a copy of the 9/11 Commission.
Yeah.
You know, that the two of them, he says, you are probably torturing an innocent man. And she says, well, 5,000 people are alive in central London tonight because of information that we elicited just this way.
So maybe you can put your head on your pillow, feel proud for saving one man,
Well, 7,000 perish, but I got grandkids in London, so I'm glad I'm doing this job. And you're not.
Well, I think the message is that we're part of an international community. Everyone is now. There's no choice.
Also on general release is The Kingdom, set in Saudi Arabia. An FBI agent, played by Jamie Foxx, arrives in Riyadh with his team to investigate the bombing of an American housing compound. Nobody wants them there, and they soon become a target themselves. What I found refreshing about The Kingdom was that the hero was not an American. He was a patriotic Saudi police chief